Pack your things and get out, you fat pig." My son said those words to his wife on the exact day he inherited $40 million. I stood there helpless, watching him destroy the woman who'd loved him for 7 years because she wasn't good enough for the life he thought he deserved. I'd just buried my wife a year ago, and now I was losing my son to greed. He thought I was just a grieving old man who'd stay silent, but my late wife had seen this coming. She'd hidden a clause in her will, one he never knew existed. And when I finally revealed it in court, his face went white. Too late for regret now. Hello everyone, welcome to our story. Before we begin, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're tuning in from. We love hearing from you. A quick note, this story weaves together fictional elements for entertainment and educational value. Any similarities to actual names or places are purely coincidental, but the lessons here are worth your time. 12 months after we buried Margaret, I found myself driving through downtown on a Tuesday morning that felt too bright. The sun glinted off glass towers like nothing had changed, like the world hadn't lost the best woman I'd ever known. My mind kept circling back to those final weeks in the hospice room. Margaret had looked at me with those sharp eyes that cancer couldn't dull and said something that stuck like a splinter. I made sure everyone gets what they deserve. At the time, I thought she meant the will, the money, simple things you leave behind. I had no idea how wrong I was. My left hand rested on the steering wheel, and the gold band on my ring finger caught the light. 38 years I'd worn that ring. 38 years of mortgage payments and Sunday dinners, and the kind of ordinary, beautiful life that feels invisible until it's gone. Margaret and I had built something real. We'd raised a son, created a home, and kept our promises. That ring meant something. Loyalty, partnership, the quiet kind of love that shows up every single day. I wondered if David still understood what his own wedding band was supposed to mean. The law offices of Crawford and Associates sat on the 14th floor of a building that tried too hard to look important. Margaret had been gone a year, and we were finally here to settle the estate. The reception area smelled like furniture polish and old money. Mahogany paneling, leather chairs, framed certificates announcing expensive expertise. Sarah arrived first, right on time, like she always was. She wore a floral dress, modest and pretty, exactly what a second-grade teacher would wear. Her dark hair was pulled back, and she'd put on makeup with care, like this day mattered. Like maybe today would mark some kind of turning point. We sat together making small talk. Sarah kept glancing at the elevator, waiting. "The money will help," she said softly. "David and I have been talking about maybe finally buying a house, starting a family. I think this could be a fresh start for us." I wanted to believe her. David showed up 20 minutes late, blowing through the elevator doors like he was doing everyone a favor. He wore an expensive suit, his dark hair styled with careful messiness. He had Margaret's eyes and my jawline, and for 35 years I'd looked at him and felt nothing but pride. Lately that pride had started to feel complicated. He pecked Sarah on the cheek without really looking at her and shook my hand. Professional. Distant. His other hand held his phone thumb, already scrolling. Sorry I'm late. Conference call ran over." Sarah's smile flickered but held. "It's fine. We just got here." That was a lie. We'd been waiting 23 minutes. David sat beside his wife, but immediately angled toward his phone screen. Sarah reached over and put her hand on his knee, a small gesture asking for connection. David glanced up, gave her a quick smile that didn't reach his eyes, and went back to his phone. I watched this and felt something cold settle in my chest. Crawford's office was more mahogany, more leather, more certificates. James Crawford sat behind a desk, the size of a small car. A lean man in his mid-50s, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He pulled out a leather folder embossed with Margaret's name. "Margaret was a remarkable woman," he began. Sharp, thoughtful, and very clear about her intentions. He read through the preliminaries. Jewelry to Sarah, books to the library, gardening tools to the neighbor. Each item had a story attached. Then Crawford reached the money. To my beloved husband, Robert Mitchell, I leave the sum of $40 million and our family home in gratitude for 38 years of unwavering partnership, devotion, and love. $40 million. I'd known Margaret had money, but that number didn't feel real. To my son, David Mitchell, and his wife, Sarah Bennett, Mitchell, I leave the sum of $40 million to be held in a joint trust, requiring both signatures for withdrawal or major financial decisions. May this gift support the life you build together and remind you daily of what matters most. David's face lit up. He sat forward, forgetting his phone. Sarah gasped, tears spilling over. 40 million. David breathed, and I heard something in his voice I didn't like. Not gratitude. Something that sounded too much like triumph. Sarah turned to him, eyes shining. We can start over. We can do everything we dreamed about. David nodded, but his hand had already drifted back to his phone, fingers moving under the table. I saw him typing, saw the small smile when he hit send. Crawford explained the trust structure, the tax implications, the timeline. Sarah asked questions, her voice trembling with hope. David made sounds of agreement, while his attention stayed fixed on his phone. Then Crawford did something that changed everything. He pulled out a cream-colored envelope with my name written across the front in Margaret's handwriting. A sealed letter for Robert Mitchell to be opened privately at your discretion. Margaret's instructions were clear. This is for you alone. I took it, and the weight felt wrong. Too heavy. My fingers traced Margaret's handwriting, and I could almost hear her voice. And everyone gets what they deserve. David barely glanced at the envelope, his focus back on his phone. Sarah was wiping her eyes. Crawford organized papers, moving toward closure. None of them saw what I saw, that this envelope wasn't an afterthought. It was deliberate, separate, secret. Margaret had left me a message she didn't want anyone else to see. We stood to leave. David was already at the door, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, it's official. The inheritance cleared. 40 million. Tonight, let me see what I can do. Sarah stood beside me, watching her husband walk away without looking back. He's just excited, she said, trying to convince herself. David's Lexus pulled up beside us. Sarah, I'll meet you at home later. Got a business thing. Client meeting. He glanced at me. Dad, that envelope, probably just sentimental stuff. You'll read it at home, right? No rush. Something in the way he said it made the hair on my neck stand up. Like he needed me to be alone when I discovered whatever Margaret had written. I'll read it when I'm ready, I said. I stood alone in that parking garage and pulled out the envelope. Through the exit ramp, I could see David's Lexus paused at the light. Even from this distance, I could see him reach for his phone. The second Sarah's car turned the opposite direction, could see him smile. The same smile he used to give Sarah when they were young and in love. He wasn't smiling at his wife anymore. He was smiling at someone else. And somehow I knew Margaret had seen it too. That's when I understood this envelope wasn't about sentiment. It was about warning. David insisted on celebrating at Riverside Grill, the kind of steakhouse where prices weren't printed on the menu. He'd made reservations before we even left Crawford's office, which told me everything about how confident he'd been that the money was coming. The hostess led us to a corner booth with a view of the harbor. Before we'd even opened our menus, David ordered expensive champagne, not the house kind, but the one that came in an ice bucket with a cloth napkin wrapped around the neck. We're celebrating, David announced to the waiter. Big family news. Sarah folded her hands in her lap. That small, nervous gesture I'd seen 100 times. She was trying to match David's energy, but something about her posture looked braced, like she was preparing for impact. David raised his glass. To new beginnings. To finally having the resources to live the life we deserve. We drank while I thought about Margaret's envelope still sitting in my jacket pocket, heavy as a stone. David ordered for the table without asking what anyone wanted. Appetizers, entrees, sides, another bottle of champagne. He was spending money he didn't technically have yet. Sarah tried steering the conversation toward practical things. Their apartment lease was ending in 3 months. Maybe they could buy a small house, something with a yard. We're thinking too small, David said, cutting into his ribeye. This isn't about some starter home in the suburbs. This is seed money, investment capital. We leverage this, right? We could triple it in 5 years. We could also just be comfortable, Sarah said quietly. Pay off debt. Save for the future. David set down his knife and fork. Sarah, you're thinking like a teacher. This is business. This is opportunity. With $40 million, I can finally move in the circles I've been locked out of. The Hartleys, the development firms, the commercial projects that actually matter. I thought we mattered, Sarah said so soft I almost missed it. David didn't hear her. His phone buzzed, screen lighting up. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression. Excitement. Anticipation. Sorry, I need to take this. Client. He was already standing, walking toward the entrance. Hey, yeah, I know. It's official. 40 million. Can you believe it? Sarah stared at her plate, pushing risotto around without eating. He's just processing a lot, she said finally. The money, the possibilities. It's overwhelming. David returned 10 minutes later, energized and distracted. That was Hartley Development. They've got a major project in the works, luxury condos on the waterfront. They want me to consult. This inheritance means I can finally afford to play in that league. Shh, that's wonderful, Sarah said. When do they need you? Tonight, actually. Dinner meeting with Peter Hartley and his team. David was already signaling for the check. Sorry, babe, I know we were going to celebrate together, but this is the kind of opportunity you don't say no to. Sarah's face did something complicated. Disappointment and resignation and exhausted acceptance. I understand, she said, but her voice said something else entirely. David interrupted before she finished talking about her students. Maybe you can finally quit that job. Sarah stopped mid-sentence. What? The teaching thing. Now that we have the money, you don't have to work anymore. Just seems like you'd have better options than wiping noses and grading spelling tests. I love teaching, Sarah said, steel in her voice. Those kids need me. That work matters. Sure. I'm just saying you have choices now. But I want to. David shrugged, already checking his phone again. Whatever makes you happy. We walked out to the parking lot. David walked ahead, phone pressed to his ear. Sarah and I followed the gap, growing with every step. Sarah, I'll meet you at home. Probably late, though. This Hartley thing could run past midnight. We could celebrate tomorrow. Sarah offered hope, painful to hear. Just the two of us. Yeah, maybe. Let me see how tonight goes. He climbed into his car, then rolled down the window. Oh, Dad, one more thing. Don't mention that phone call at lunch to Sarah. Okay? I don't want her worrying about work stuff. He was asking his father to lie to his wife. No, of course, I said, and watched him drive away. Sarah drove away too, and I stood alone in that parking lot watching two separate cars head in two separate directions. At home, I sat in Margaret's study and opened the envelope. Inside were 2 documents, a handwritten letter and a legal form. I started with the letter, and Margaret's voice filled my head. Robert, my love, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and David has his inheritance. I prayed I was wrong about what I saw, but mothers know their children in ways that bypass hope. This past year, I watched our son change. Late nights distance from Sarah phone calls he thought I didn't notice. I saw him with a woman at Riverside Grill last September. A Hartley, I learned later. Young, beautiful, ambitious. I've added a clause to David's inheritance. If he commits infidelity or abandons Sarah without just cause within 5 years of receiving the money, his entire $40 million transfers immediately to her. No appeals, no negotiations. Robert, I need you to be my witness. Watch David. Document what he does. And when the time comes, be the man I've loved for 38 years. Always yours, Margaret. My hands shook. I picked up the legal document and found the clause written in Crawford's precise language buried in Section 7, subsection 3. 5 years. A timer I hadn't known was counting. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Hey, Dad, do me a favor and don't mention that call at lunch to Sarah. Don't want her worrying about nothing." I typed back. "Of course." Then I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Named it Evidence June 2024. I typed the date, the time, the location. Lunch at Riverside Grill. Multiple phone calls. David lied to Sarah about work. Requested father's cooperation in deception. My phone buzzed again. Also, if Sarah asks about tonight, it's a client dinner with the Hartley team. Just for your information, so our stories match. I added it to the evidence file. David had 5 years to prove he was worth the inheritance. Based on today, I didn't think he'd make it 5 weeks. Margaret's words kept me awake that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, while my mind replayed every detail from the restaurant, that final text from David asking me to cover his lies. By the time the sun came up, I'd made my decision. I needed to understand exactly what Margaret had set in motion and what my role was supposed to be. I called James Crawford's office the moment they opened and asked for an emergency consultation. "Robert, what's wrong?" Crawford's voice carried genuine concern. "I need to talk about Margaret's clause today." "Give me an hour. I'll clear my schedule." Crawford's office felt different this time. He pulled up a chair next to mine. "Colleagues, not attorney and client." "You read Margaret's letter," he said. Not a question. 3 times. Then I stayed up all night thinking about it. Crawford pulled out a file with Margaret's handwriting on colored tabs marking different sections. She'd been thorough. "The clause is airtight," Crawford began. "If David commits adultery or abandons Sarah without documented just cause before June 10th, 2029, the trustee transfers his $40 million to Sarah immediately. No probate process, no appeals. The money moves, and it's done. What counts as just cause? Documented abuse, substance addiction, requiring intervention, mental incapacity, felony conviction, abandonment by Sarah. Essentially, if Sarah gives him legitimate reason to leave, the clause doesn't trigger. But if he leaves her or betrays her, it activates. "He doesn't know," I said. "David doesn't know about the clause." Per Margaret's explicit instructions, the clause remains sealed unless 2 things happen. Option 1, 5 years pass without violation, at which point it expires, and David never needs to know. Option 2, it's triggered, at which point it becomes part of the public court record. So if I see him cheating, you document everything. Dates, times, locations, witnesses, photographs if possible. If Sarah files a claim to enforce the clause, we'll need enough evidence to convince a judge that the violation occurred. "But I can't tell her about the money," I said slowly. "If I tell Sarah about the $40 million, it could look like I'm influencing her decision to leave him." "Exactly. Sarah has to make her own choices. The clause exists to protect her if she makes the right choice, not to bribe her into making it." That evening, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove to Harborside Lounge, a cocktail bar in the renovated warehouse district. I parked across the street with a clear view through the floor-to-ceiling windows. 7:43 on a Tuesday night. And there they were. Corner booth, candlelight, champagne bucket. David wore the suit from the will reading. The woman across from him was striking, blonde hair, sharp features, expensive dress. She laughed at something David said, reaching across the table to touch his arm. Not a casual touch. The kind of touch that meant they'd touched before, often in ways that went beyond cocktails. Then David leaned forward and kissed her. No hesitation, no checking to see if anyone was watching. I took 3 photos. Hands shaking so badly the first one came out blurred, but the second and third were clear enough. I saved the photos to the cloud, backed them up twice, and added them to the evidence folder with timestamps and location data. Then I texted Sarah because I needed to hear she was okay, even though I knew she wasn't. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" Her response came back within seconds. "I'm okay, Dad. David's working late again. I made his favorite chicken piccata for dinner, but I guess it'll keep until tomorrow." Through the bar window, I watched David pour more champagne, watched the blonde woman slide closer in the booth, watched my son become someone I didn't recognize. The next morning, Sarah called asking if I could help them move a dresser. David was supposed to help, but had another meeting. Their apartment was small, but comfortable. Sarah had made it warm with plants and photographs and curtains she'd sewn herself. She talked about maybe using some of the inheritance money for adoption. David's always wanted kids, she said, eyes bright with hope. "I think once we're more settled, we could really start our family." I wanted to tell her that David hadn't mentioned kids once yesterday, that her dream of building a family with him was based on a version of David that maybe didn't exist anymore. "That sounds wonderful," I said instead, and hated myself for the lie. David showed up an hour later, annoyed we'd started without him. He barely looked at the pastries Sarah had bought, barely acknowledged the coffee she'd made. "Can we do this another time?" he asked, not looking up from his phone. "I've got calls to make." "I already set everything up," Sarah said softly. "It'll just take 20 minutes. He sighed theatrically and finally pocketed his phone. We moved the dresser into their bedroom. He complained the whole time about his schedule, his meetings, all the important things he had to do that didn't involve helping his wife. When we finished, David checked his watch. "I really need to head out. Client meeting in 40 minutes. Your mother loved you both very much." I said the words coming out before I could stop them. "She wanted you to be happy. Both of you happy." "We are happy," David said, too quick, too defensive. "Right, Sarah." He didn't wait for her answer. Just grabbed his keys and headed for the door. "I've got a call. Let yourself out." Sarah sat back down at the kitchen table, staring at her coffee. "You deserve better than cold dinners and broken promises," I said finally. She pulled her hands into her lap, defensive. "He's just adjusting. The money, the opportunities. It's overwhelming for him. If you ever need anything," I said, "you call me, day or night. You understand." She nodded, eyes bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. My phone buzzed before I'd even reached my truck. Text from David. "Hey Dad, don't mention the Hartley stuff to Sarah. Okay? She gets weird about Vanessa, thinks there's something there. Women, right?" My son had just admitted there was someone named Vanessa. Had casually asked his father to help hide an affair. I typed back, "Your secret's safe." Then I opened the evidence folder and added a new entry. 5 years until the clause expired. 60 months. I didn't think my son would make it 60. The text came through on a Wednesday afternoon while I was replacing the bathroom faucet. "David wants you to come to dinner tonight. He says he has exciting news to share." Sarah's words, not David's. That detail stuck with me. If the news was so exciting, why hadn't my son called me himself? I texted back that I'd be there at 7, then spent the rest of the afternoon with a knot in my stomach. By 6:45, I was standing in the flower section of the grocery store, picking out sunflowers for Sarah, because she deserved something cheerful. Their apartment smelled like pot roast and garlic comfort food that took hours to make properly. The small dining table was set with their wedding china candles flickering in glass holders. Sarah had created something special here, a celebration dinner. "Where's David?" I asked. "We're running late. Work thing." She checked her phone for the 3rd time since I'd arrived. "He texted 20 minutes ago. Should be here any minute." 7:30 came and went. The candles burned lower. Sarah reheated the gravy twice, stirring it with mechanical precision, while her smile grew tighter. 8:15. The key finally turned in the lock. David walked in, still wearing his Bluetooth earpiece, finishing a conversation with someone who wasn't us. He didn't acknowledge the set table, the candles, the effort Sarah had poured into this dinner. Just headed straight for the whiskey cabinet. He took a long drink, loosened his tie, and finally addressed the room. "I'll make this quick. No hello. No apology for being over an hour late." Sarah stood from the couch, smoothing her dress. "Should I serve dinner now, or—" "Sit down, Sarah." The tone made something cold slide down my spine. Not angry, not emotional, just flat and final. Sarah sat. I stayed standing, every instinct screaming that I needed to be ready for whatever was about to happen. David took another sip of whiskey, then turned back to face us with an expression I'd never seen before. Detached. Distant. "I've made some decisions about our future," he said. "The Hartley project is moving forward. I'm partnering directly with Peter Hartley's development firm. Major opportunity." Sarah's face tried on a smile that didn't fit right. "That's wonderful, honey. I can finally operate at the level I should be at, which means some changes need to happen. I've put a deposit down on a condo in Hartley Tower. 2-bedroom, 30th floor, harbor view. Move-in is next week." Sarah's attempted smile began to crack. "We're moving, but I love this neighborhood and my school is right down the street." "I'm moving, Sarah." 2 words that landed like a demolition ball. "I don't understand," she whispered. David set his glass down without using a coaster. "I'm asking for a divorce. You can stay here for now, but I'll need you out by the end of the month. The lease is in my name. Clinical, transactional, like he was terminating a gym membership instead of a 7-year marriage." The color drained from Sarah's face. "David, what are you—" "We just got your mother's inheritance. We were supposed to—" "That money is exactly why I can finally do this. I've been unhappy for years, Sarah. You know it. I know it. Let's not pretend anymore." I started moving toward him. David held up one hand. "Dad, stay out of this." Sarah's voice came out broken, desperate. "Is there someone else?" "That's not the point." "Is there someone else?" David exhaled, annoyed. "Vanessa and I have been seeing each other. Yes, she understands my ambitions. She gets what I'm trying to build. She fits the life I'm building now." Sarah made a sound like all the air had been punched out of her lungs. How long?" Her voice was barely audible. "Does it matter?" "How long, David?" 9 months. 9 months. While Margaret was dying. While they sat in hospital waiting rooms holding hands. While Sarah stood beside him at the funeral, steadying him when he cried. My voice came out low and dangerous. "David, think very carefully about what you're doing. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years." He gestured at Sarah with his whiskey glass, casual and cruel. "Look at her dad. She's let herself go. She's boring. She teaches finger painting to kindergartners and thinks that's a career. I'm about to close deals worth millions." Sarah stood, her whole body shaking. "You told me you loved me. 2 weeks ago you said—" I said what I needed to say until the inheritance cleared. Now it has. And I'm done. I stepped between them. "That's enough." "No, Dad." Sarah's voice had changed, gone cold and steady. "Let him finish. Let him show me exactly who he is." David pulled out his phone, typed something, hit send. "Vanessa's on her way up. I'd prefer you be gone before she gets here. Pack what you need tonight. The rest we'll figure out through lawyers." A car horn sounded from the street below. "That's her." Sarah walked to the mantel where their wedding photo sat in a silver frame. She picked it up, stared at it for a long moment, then set it down facing the wall. "I loved you," she whispered. "Through everything. I loved you." David adjusted his Rolex. "I know. That was the problem. You loved me more than you loved yourself." The doorbell rang. I helped Sarah pack a suitcase while my hands shook with rage. Downstairs, I could hear Vanessa's laughter, bright and careless. David's voice responding, relaxed in a way I hadn't heard in months. In my truck, Sarah sat silent in the passenger seat while I drove away from the building she'd called home for 3 years. She didn't cry. Her face had gone blank, shock settling in. At a red light, I pulled out my phone and opened the evidence folder. June 15th, 2024, 8:47 p.m. David Mitchell admitted to 9-month extramarital affair. Forcibly removed wife from shared residence. Mistress arrived same evening. Witness Robert Mitchell. I sent a text to James Crawford. We need to talk. Tomorrow morning. It's time. My phone buzzed immediately. David, thanks for helping Dad. Knew you'd understand. This is what's best for everyone. I stared at that message at my son's complete inability to see what he'd just done and felt something fundamental break in my chest. I deleted the text without responding. Sarah stared out the window, face reflected in the glass. I don't know what happens now, she said, finally, voice hollow. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Now we fight back. The Comfort Inn off Highway 9 had a neon sign that flickered between vacancy and no, like it couldn't make up its mind. I pulled into the parking lot at 1:30 in the morning. The building squat and anonymous, exactly what we needed. Sarah hadn't spoken since we left the apartment. The night clerk barely looked up when I paid cash for 2 weeks. Room 237, second floor, overlooking the parking lot. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing that blue dress Margaret had bought her, her packed suitcase untouched by the door. She looked small in the cheap fluorescent light diminished. I don't understand, she whispered. We were going to use that money for adoption, for a future. I sat beside her, careful not to crowd her space. He's not the man you married. When did he change, or was I just too stupid to see it? You weren't stupid. You were loyal. There's a difference. Sarah stared at her hands, twisting the wedding ring she hadn't taken off yet. He said I'd let myself go, that I was boring. Maybe he's right. Stop. My voice came out harder than I intended. You're a woman who kept loving someone who stopped deserving it. That's not weakness, Sarah. That's strength he'll never understand. That's when she finally cried. Real tears, the kind that had been building since David walked through that door and destroyed everything. I held her while she shook, feeling completely helpless and furiously angry all at once. At 3 in the morning, when her breathing had finally evened into exhausted sleep, I stepped outside and called Crawford. It happened, I said without preamble. I need to know our next steps. By 10 o'clock that same morning, I was back in Crawford's office. He'd cleared his schedule. He spread my documentation across his desk, like evidence at a crime scene. Photos from the bar, David's texts, timestamps the video I'd taken of Vanessa arriving while Sarah packed. This is solid, Crawford said, nodding slowly. Clear proof of infidelity. The abandonment is documented. If Sarah files to enforce the clause, we have enough to convince any judge. When do we tell her about the money? Not yet. Crawford's tone was firm. Sarah has to file for divorce because she wants to end the marriage, not because $40 million is waiting for her. If she knows about the inheritance before she makes that choice, David's lawyers will argue undue influence. And if she doesn't file, then we wait. But Robert, from what you've described, she will. This kind of betrayal doesn't heal. Crawford pulled a business card from his desk drawer. Give her this. Marcus Webb Family Law. Tell her he's offering services for a friend of the family. He knows about the clause and won't mention it until the time is right. I pocketed the card. What about David? He'll fight this. Good. Let him fight. Every move he makes will prove Margaret's clause was justified. That afternoon, I drove past Hartley Tower. Couldn't help myself. Needed to see what David had traded his marriage for. The building dominated the waterfront, all glass and steel and expensive views. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows on the 30th floor, I could make out movement. David and Vanessa champagne glasses catching afternoon light, gesturing at their new space like they were planning how to fill it. David's life had upgraded overnight. I drove back to the Comfort Inn, where Sarah answered the door in jeans and an old college t-shirt, eyes red but clear. She'd showered, pulled her hair back, started the slow process of putting herself back together. "Joe, I called a lawyer," she said before I'd even sat down. "Marcus Webb. He said you referred him." I nodded. "He said I have a strong case. David's affair, the abandonment, the timeline." She paused, studying my face. "He also said something strange, that I should document every expense, every asset, every communication, like he's expecting some major discovery." My pulse quickened. Crawford was preparing her without revealing the clause yet. "I'm going back to work Monday." Sarah continued her jaw setting with determination I recognized from Margaret. "I'm not going to fall apart. David thinks I'm weak. I'm going to prove him wrong." That evening I found myself at Margaret's grave as the sun dropped toward the horizon. The granite headstone was still new enough to gleam her name, and dates carved with precision that felt too clinical for everything she'd been. I knelt in the grass, tracing her name with my finger. "I'm keeping my promise," I whispered. "But this is going to hurt him. Our son. I'm going to help take away everything he thinks matters." The wind moved through the cemetery trees. "You were right. He did this to himself." My voice caught. "But he's still our boy. And I don't know if what I'm about to do is justice or revenge." I sat there until the shadows grew long, talking to her like she could hear. My phone buzzed, startling me. Text from David. "Hey Dad, sorry about the drama last week. Sarah's taking it hard. Can you check on her, make sure she's okay? I still care about her, just not in that way anymore." I stared at that message, reading it 3 times. My son wanted me to comfort the woman he'd destroyed while he celebrated with his mistress. Wanted me to make sure she was handling her devastation well. I typed back carefully. "I'm taking care of Sarah. Don't worry about her." Then I added one more line. "Your mother would be proud of how you're handling everything." I hit send, knowing he'd read it as approval when it was actually condemnation. I opened the evidence folder and added a new entry. June 18th. David requested I provide emotional support to Sarah while he cohabits with a affair partner. Demonstrates awareness of harm caused, plus lack of remorse. Asked me to verify she's okay, while enjoying new luxury condo with Vanessa Hartley. I saved it, backed it up to 3 separate locations, then stood at Margaret's grave one final time. "Let the games begin," I whispered to her headstone. Somewhere across town, Sarah was probably planning her first day back at work, preparing to face second graders who would ask where Mr. David was. Somewhere in Hartley Tower, David was probably pouring more champagne, showing Vanessa the view, congratulating himself on finally having the life he deserved. And here in this cemetery, I was preparing to honor my wife's final wishes by destroying our son's carefully constructed future. Margaret had seen this coming a year ago, had planned for it, prepared for it, trusted me to execute it when the time came. The time had come. 10 days after I stood at Margaret's grave and declared war on my son's lies, I found my truck keys sitting on the kitchen counter instead of hanging on the hook by the door where I'd left them. Small thing. Easy to dismiss. I grabbed them and headed out for groceries, thinking nothing of it until later that night when my reading glasses turned up in the refrigerator next to the milk. I laughed it off. 62 wasn't 90. People misplaced things. Then David started calling every day. "Just checking in, Dad. How are you feeling? Any confusion, forgetting things?" "I'm fine. A little forgetful maybe, but that's normal. It's just Mom's death was hard on you. Sometimes grief affects memory. If you need anything, I'm here." The calls felt caring at first. My son reaching out, making sure I was okay. I appreciated the attention after feeling invisible during his whirlwind with Vanessa. July 2nd changed everything. I woke at 2 in the morning to use the bathroom and found my front door standing wide open. I knew I'd locked it. Had checked it twice like I did every night since Margaret died. I called David immediately. He arrived within 20 minutes, hair messed from sleep, genuine concern on his face. Dad, did you forget to lock it? No, I locked it. I checked twice. His expression shifted to something that looked like pity. Okay, let's just make sure everything's secure. He walked through the house, checking windows while I followed, watching him test locks and peer into closets. When I stepped into the living room to check the back door, I didn't see him move my coffee maker from its usual spot to the opposite counter. The next morning, I reached for it automatically. My hand found empty space. I turned confused and spotted it across the kitchen. My phone rang. David. Morning sleep, okay. Door stayed locked. Yeah, but did you move my coffee maker when you were here? Long pause. No, Dad. I didn't touch your coffee maker. Are you feeling all right? That afternoon, he called again, suggesting I schedule a checkup. Just routine, he said. Stress after losing mom, grief doing strange things to the mind. Dr. Jennifer Palmer came highly recommended. I agreed to the appointment mostly to stop his worried calls. Palmer's office was all chrome and leather certificates covering the walls. David showed up 5 minutes after I arrived, apologetic about being in the neighborhood, insisting he wanted to support me. During the examination, he kept interjecting. Dad's been forgetting things. Keys locking doors. Last week, he called me at 2 a.m., convinced someone broke in, but the door was just unlocked. He'd locked it, but didn't remember. Wait, that's not what happened. The door was locked. Dr. Palmer's voice stayed gentle. Robert, disorientation after losing a spouse is completely normal. He's also been emotional, David continued, calling me about Mom, forgetting we'd already had those conversations. My frustration built. David, you're twisting things. Dad, I'm worried. That's all. His hand landed on my shoulder, his voice catching slightly. I can't lose you too. Palmer ran cognitive tests. I passed easily. No signs of dementia. Some stress markers expected given your circumstances. But the memory lapses. David pressed. Monitor it. Keep a journal. If it continues, we'll do deeper testing. In the parking lot, David hugged me tight. I'm sorry. I'm just scared. You're all I have left. Guilt washed over me for being annoyed. My son was grieving too. 3 days later, Linda Foster knocked on my door with a casserole. She saw David here late last night, around 11. Didn't know you had company. I frowned. David wasn't here last night. Her face clouded. Robert, I saw his car. Silver Lexus, right? I checked my phone. No texts from David. Maybe you saw someone else's car. Maybe, she said slowly, but her expression said otherwise. After she left, I pulled up my security camera footage. July 11th, 11:17 p.m. David's Lexus in my driveway. David entering with a key I didn't know he had, staying 11 minutes, leaving. I called him immediately. Why were you in my house last night? His voice came smooth, unbothered. I wasn't. I was with Vanessa all evening. I have you on camera. Pause. Oh, wait. Yeah, I stopped by. You asked me to grab your blood pressure medication. Remember, you called at 10:30. No, I didn't. Dad. His voice shifted to concern. You did. I have the call log. Want me to send you a screenshot? I checked my phone. There was an outgoing call to David at 10:33, but I had no memory of making it. I sat in my living room staring at that call log for an hour. Had I called him and forgotten, was my memory failing? Then I noticed my TV remote on the kitchen table. I never left it there. It lived on the arm of my recliner. I went back to the camera footage and watched it again, this time paying attention to what David did inside. Watched him adjust picture frames a 1/4 inch. Move the remote. Shift the salt shaker from the left side of the stove to the right. Small things. Crazy-making things. I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it, Gaslighting Evidence. My phone rang. David. Hey Dad, just checking in. Dr. Palmer asked me to keep an eye on you. How's your memory today? Anything else missing or moved? My hand tightened on the phone. I understood now. My son wasn't worried about me. My son was trying to make me look unstable. And suddenly Margaret's clause made perfect sense. David needed me discredited before the inheritance could be challenged. If I testified about his affair, his abandonment of Sarah, he needed people to dismiss me as confused, unreliable, a grieving old man whose mind was slipping. I answered, keeping my voice steady. My memory's perfect, son. Crystal clear. After I hung up, I sat at Margaret's desk and stared at her photograph. She'd known. Somehow she'd known David would do this, would go this far to protect what he thought he deserved. I opened the evidence folder and added a new file. Started documenting every call, every manipulation, every small, cruel thing David was doing to make me doubt my own mind. He thought he was clever, thought he could gaslight his father into incompetence. He didn't know I was recording everything. 5 days after I started documenting David's gaslighting, my phone reminded me about the follow-up appointment with Dr. Palmer. I arrived alone, ready to play the role of concerned elderly man, while my phone recorded everything from my jacket pocket. David showed up 5 minutes after I checked in, claiming he'd been nearby. We both knew that was a lie. Palmer's office felt colder this time. She pulled out a spiral notebook I'd never seen before. Pages filled with handwriting that looked like mine, but shakier, more erratic. Entries describing confusion, forgotten conversations, items appearing in wrong places. These entries are concerning, she said. That's not my journal. David leaned forward. Dad, we started it together after your last appointment. You've been writing in it every night. I've never seen that notebook. Palmer and David exchanged the look. I'd come to recognize it instantly. Pity mixed with worry, the universal expression of people convinced you're losing your mind. Robert, what year is it? Palmer asked gently. On 2024, July 15th, Thursday. I had oatmeal for breakfast, drove myself here, and my son is lying. David's mask slipped for half a second. Pure frustration flashed across his face before the concerned son expression returned. Have you considered that stress over David and Sarah's divorce might be affecting your perception? Palmer's tone stayed professional. There it was. David had told her about the separation, framed me as taking sides, becoming irrational. My perception is fine. My son, however, is trying to make me look unstable. Dad, why would I do that? Excellent question. I stood. Dr. Palmer, I'd like a second opinion. Can you recommend another psychiatrist? David spoke quickly. I actually already arranged a consultation. Dr. Richard Hayes. He specializes in seniors dealing with grief and major life transitions. How thoughtful. When? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. David's smile didn't reach his eyes. Robert nodded slowly. I'll be there. After the appointment, David insisted on dinner at Harbor View, an upscale place overlooking the water. Vanessa was already waiting at the table when we arrived. She played her role perfectly. Concerned, compassionate, asking gentle questions about my health, while suggesting I might benefit from more support. She mentioned a retirement community her father's company had developed, beautiful place with full medical staff and memory care units. I understood immediately. They weren't just trying to discredit me. They wanted me isolated in a facility where they could control everything, including my inheritance. My phone sat in my jacket pocket, recording every word. David relaxed as dinner progressed, confident I was playing along. He mentioned the Hartley merger, how important family stability was for major business deals, how clear asset management mattered to investors. I asked simple questions, let him talk, gave him rope. That night, I reviewed my security footage. Found exactly what I expected. David had entered my house that afternoon, while I was at Palmer's office, placed the fake journal on my desk, where I'd supposedly been writing in it nightly. I called Crawford immediately. Hayes is Peter Hartley's personal psychiatrist. Crawford said. If he diagnoses you as incompetent, David can file for conservatorship. He'd control both inheritances. I'm going to that appointment, but I'm bringing backup. What kind of backup? The kind that carries weight in court. I hung up and called Linda Foster. Asked if her doorbell camera had caught David's late-night visits. She'd already saved the footage, had been wondering if she should mention it. Save everything, I told her. I'm going to need it soon. That night I sat in Margaret's study, her letter spread on the desk under the lamp. Save our son from himself, she'd written. But saving David now meant destroying his carefully built lies completely, publicly, permanently. He wasn't just greedy anymore. He was dangerous. The next morning, I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd worn to Margaret's funeral. Dark, navy, crisp white shirt, the tie she'd bought me for our 35th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror. 62 years old, still sharp, still strong. Not some confused old man whose mind was slipping. I texted Sarah. I need you to do something for me today. I need you as a witness. Her response came within seconds. Where and when? I gave her Hayes's office address and the appointment time. Didn't explain why. Just asked her to trust me. She wrote back. I trust you. I'll be there. I picked up my phone, checked that the recording app was working, made sure the battery was fully charged. Put it in my jacket pocket, where it would catch every word Hayes said. Crawford had prepared me for what to expect. Hayes would be more aggressive than Palmer would push harder for a diagnosis that supported David's narrative. The appointment was a trap designed to manufacture evidence of my incompetence. But David had made one critical mistake. He'd taught me exactly how this game was played. Showed me every manipulation technique, every way to twist words and plant doubt. And now I was going to use those same tactics against him. I drove to Hayes's office with Sarah's text on my phone screen. I'll be there. Margaret's words echoed in my mind. Not the ones from her letter, but something she'd said when we were young and building our business. The best defense is letting them think they're winning right up until the moment you prove they've already lost. Time to prove David had already lost. He just didn't know it yet. The invitation never came, which told me everything I needed to know. David's merger celebration at Hartley Tower was family business, and I'd been written out of the family. I went anyway. July 25th, a Thursday evening, humid enough to make my dress shirt stick to my back during the short walk from the parking garage. Hartley Tower's penthouse event space occupied the top 3 floors, all glass and steel, and views that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Security at the elevator tried to stop me until I mentioned I was David Mitchell's father. They stepped aside. The space was packed with people who mattered. City developers in $1,000 suits, council members whose votes shaped skylines, women in dresses that cost more than my truck. Servers circulated with champagne and appetizers too small to actually fill anyone up. Vanessa saw me first. She wore silver something that caught light and attention in equal measure. Her expression froze for half a second, before smoothing into a hostess smile. She touched David's arm, whispered something, and his head turned. Our eyes met across 50 feet of expensive real estate. Surprise, then annoyance, then the mask sliding back into place. He excused himself from a conversation with 3 men in matching ties and crossed the room. Dad, I didn't know you were coming. Wanted to see what $40 million bought you. His smile went tight. It's an investment. Mom would be proud. Your mother left you that money to build a life with Sarah, not to impress people whose last names are on buildings. His hand found my elbow, grip harder than necessary. Keep your voice down. This isn't the place. He steered me toward a corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread below us, lights coming on as twilight faded. From up here, everything looked small and manageable. Mr. Mitchell. The voice came from behind us, deep and assured. Peter Hartley, even taller, up-close, silver hair, perfect suit, that probably cost what I used to make in a month. Peter Hartley. Your son is brilliant. We're fortunate to have him. He's fortunate to have his mother's inheritance to invest. Peter's smile never wavered. Generational wealth exists to be leveraged. David understands that. I hope you'll support his vision. The words were pleasant. The meaning underneath wasn't. Dad's been under stress, David said quickly. Mom's passing hit him hard. Of course, grief is a difficult journey. Peter's hand landed on my shoulder, brief and heavy. If you need anything medical care counseling, we have excellent resources. Family takes care of family. He moved away, rejoining a cluster of important people near the bar. David watched him go, then turned back to me. You need to leave. This is a public event. It's a private business function, and you're embarrassing me. His voice stayed low, but the edge in it was sharp. Go home, Dad. We'll talk later. I left before he could have security escort me out. Took the elevator down 60 floors while champagne-drunk laughter echoed from above. David caught up to me in the parking garage, jogging between concrete pillars in his expensive shoes. Wait, just wait. I stopped at my truck key fob in hand. I need to talk to you about something. He was breathing hard, loosening his tie. Your inheritance. The 40 million. What about it? Have you thought about estate planning investment strategy? He leaned against my truck like we were having a casual father-son chat. That money is sitting in a trust account doing nothing. It could be working for you. It's working fine. What if we pool resources, your 40, my 40? Do something major together. Real legacy building. There it was. The ask I'd been waiting for since Margaret died. Why would I do that? His expression shifted, concern replacing calculation. Because honestly, Dad, I'm worried about your ability to manage that kind of money long term. With your memory issues, the confusion. What if someone takes advantage of you? Someone like you. I'm trying to protect you. The gentleness dropped. Palmer and Hayes both documented cognitive concerns. If something happens, if you become incapacitated, that money needs proper management. Are you threatening me? I'm helping you. Before things get worse. He straightened, brushing garage dust off his sleeve. Think about it. Joint account co-trustees. That way, when you need help, everything's already in place. I opened the truck door. My memory is fine. My judgment is fine. And my money is mine. His mask slipped. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Making what harder? He caught himself, the concern sliding back. Making sure you're cared for. That's all. I drove home through traffic that moved like cold honey, called Crawford from the driveway. He wants my inheritance, the whole plan. Discredit me, prove incompetence, file for conservatorship control, both inheritances. Conservatorship requires proof you can't manage your affairs. If you're clearly competent, they're manufacturing evidence. Palmer Hayes, the fake journal, the emergency medical contact they added without permission. Crawford went quiet. Move your money, tonight. Somewhere David can't track. I hung up and looked at the house. 40 years of mortgage payments and memories. David learned to walk on that porch. Margaret planted roses along the fence every spring. Now he wanted to take it all. My phone buzzed. Sarah. Heard about David's engagement on social media. Are you okay? I'm fine. How are you? Surviving. Marcus says divorce should be final soon. David's lawyer keeps delaying, but we'll get there. I almost told her. Almost said your ex-husband is about to lose $40 million and doesn't know it yet. But Crawford's voice echoed. Let her choose divorce for the right reasons. You're stronger than you know. So are you. After she hung up, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. Transferred $38 million to a new account at a different institution under a trust name David wouldn't recognize. Left $2 million in the original account. Enough to look legitimate, not enough to be worth fighting over. My email pinged. Automated alert from Dr. Palmer's office. David Mitchell had been added as emergency contact on my medical records. I hadn't authorized that. I called Crawford back. They're moving faster than we thought. How long until they file? Days, maybe a week. We need to be ready. I looked at Margaret's photo on my desk. They're coming for everything. Then we hit them first, with everything. I opened the evidence folder. 43 documented incidents. Photos, recordings, medical records showing I'd passed every cognitive test. Financial transfers. Witness statements from Linda Foster. Camera footage of David breaking into my house. Let them come, I whispered. Reputation is a fragile thing. David knew that. Which is why he started destroying mine in public 9 days after his merger celebration. The community center fundraiser had been on Margaret's calendar for 20 years. She'd served on the board, organized silent auctions, baked cookies that sold for double what they were worth. Missing it would have been admitting defeat. I went anyway. August 3rd, a Saturday afternoon that felt too bright for what was coming. The center's main hall was packed with people I'd known for decades. Neighbors, friends, Pastor Williams, who'd married us and buried her. I was setting up Margaret's memorial photo display when David walked in with Vanessa. He didn't come to me, didn't acknowledge the photos I'd arranged. Just started working the room like a politician handshake and concerned expression perfectly calibrated. I heard him before I saw what he was doing. Just want to check on Dad. He's been struggling since Mom passed. Pastor Williams nodded sympathetically. David's voice dropped, but not enough. Memory lapses. The doctors are concerned. I moved closer, pretending to adjust a photo frame. The Hendersons were next. Found him confused in the grocery store parking lot last week. Couldn't remember where he'd parked. Had to help him search for 20 minutes. That never happened. I hadn't been to that grocery store in a month. Margaret's book club friends clustered near the refreshment table. David approached with practiced worry. We're looking into memory care facilities, just to have options. You understand. Mrs. Henderson broke away from the group and found me by the display. Her hand touched my arm, gentle and pitying. Not Robert, honey, if you need anything. Rides to appointments, meals, brought over someone to check in. Please let us know. Understanding hit like cold water. David was preemptively explaining me, building a story where anything I said about him would sound like confusion, paranoia, the sad decline of a grieving man whose mind was slipping. If I accused him of gaslighting, they'd think it was cognitive decline. If I mentioned his affair, they'd assume I'd mixed up facts. If I said he was trying to steal my inheritance, they'd hear paranoid delusions. He was making me unreliable before I could become dangerous. I found him near the buffet table, pulled him aside. What are you doing? His arm went around my shoulders, voice loud enough to carry. Dad, I was just telling everyone how brave you're being. His grip tightened, fingers digging into my shoulder blade. Smile and act normal, or I'll tell them you're having an episode. I smiled. He released me and walked away. 20 minutes later, I overheard Vanessa holding court with women I'd known since David was in elementary school. It's heartbreaking watching David try to care for his father. Robert gets combative when David tries to help. Makes accusations, says David is stealing from him, lying about things. She shook her head, expression perfectly sad. The doctors think it might be paranoia, grief-induced cognitive issues. That's so sad, one woman said. Robert was always so sharp. Was, past tense, like I'd already died. My hands shook. I gripped the edge of a table to steady them. Every word was calculated. They weren't just lying. They were building a medical narrative with vocabulary that sounded professional, authoritative, irreversible. The fundraiser ended at 4. David found me packing up Margaret's photos. We need to talk about next steps. There are no next steps. He sighed, patient and weary. I've scheduled a family meeting. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my place. Dr. Palmer, Dr. Hayes, and a social worker will be there. We're discussing your care plan. I don't need a care plan. The medical professionals disagree. He pulled a folder from his messenger bag. Reports evaluations. This is serious. I can't watch you decline and do nothing. I took the folder, flipped through pages that made me look unstable, missed appointments I'd never scheduled, erratic behavior I'd never exhibited, financial confusion that didn't exist. This is fiction. It's documentation. His voice dropped private and cold. You can fight this, make it ugly, or you can let people who love you help. Your choice. And if I don't come to your family meeting, his smile didn't reach his eyes. Then we file for emergency conservatorship. A judge reviews these records and decides you're a danger to yourself. Is that what you want? I drove home in silence, hands tight on the wheel. Called Sarah from my driveway because she was the only person who'd understand. They're trying to force me into a conservatorship. What, Robert? Why? Because I know what David did, and I'm in the way. Silence. Then, what did he do? I almost told her. Almost said he's about to lose everything and doesn't know it yet. But if she knew about the money before choosing to fight, it would taint her choice. He's trying to control my inheritance, discredit me, make me look incompetent. Her voice went hard. He's doing to you what he did to me, making you doubt yourself. I'm not doubting myself, but everyone else is. Then we fight back, together. You helped me when I had nothing. Let me help you. How? I'm a witness. I've seen David lie, manipulate, destroy. If they try to paint you as unstable, I'll testify that you're the sanest person I know. My throat went tight. Thank you. The family protects family, and you're more family to me than David ever was. After we hung up, I called Crawford and Marcus on a conference line. They're forcing a meeting tomorrow. Doctor's social worker intervention setup. It's a trap. Crawford's response was immediate. Don't go. If you attend, you legitimize their process. They'll twist everything you say. Marcus agreed. And Robert, it's time. We need to tell Sarah about the clause. I sat at my kitchen table with Margaret's letter in front of me. Tomorrow, David expected me to walk into an ambush, to be declared incompetent, to lose everything. I opened my laptop and typed an email to Crawford. File the trust violation claim, today. Let's end this. My finger hovered over send. The doorbell rang. 10:37 p.m. Security camera showed 2 police cars in my driveway. 4 officers. David standing on my porch, phone in hand, face arranged in grave concern.